everyone, and welcome to the Variety Streaming Room. My name is Danielle Terciano. I'm a senior features editor in television here at Variety. Today we have a really exciting panel. It's for Netflix's Dead to Me, and we have both the creator and the stars. So I'd like to just welcome them right now and get right into it. We have creator and executive producer Liz Feldman, and the two series leads, Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So Liz, I kind of want to start with you for a second because Dead to Me is one of those just really rare dark comedies that goes beyond the typical boundaries of the half-hour format. We've called it traumedy. I think we've called it tragic comedy. I don't know how you guys refer to it in your writer's room, but I wanted to look at what inspires that level of darkness for you, especially looking at season 2, you know, the storyline where Jen killed Steve out of anger and then goes to so many deaths to cover it up and to keep it a secret from Judy, her best friend, for most of the season.
I think for me, I was longing to create a show that felt true to life in its tone. Maybe not in the situation, obviously. It's a bit of a heightened situation, sometimes even soap opera-esque at times. But I really wanted the characters to feel grounded. I wanted it to feel like ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Because the way that I realize that I look at life is that any sort of given day can be a traumedy. You know, I mean, you can wake up and, you know, have a hilarious conversation with your spouse or with a friend or a coworker, and you're laughing all day, and then you get a phone call, something terrible happened. And, you know, one moment can so insanely shift the tone of your day. I wanted to explore what that might look like in a TV show. I've always been a comedy, like a, you know, broad comedy writer, but I've always enjoyed shows that were very twisty and turny, like Damages and like The Affair. You know, I love shows that constantly surprise you. And I kept thinking, like, well, what if I could do a show like that, but it's funny, you know? And that's sort of where Dead to Me came from.
And when you do look at kind of the balance of the trauma and the comedy, I'm not asking you for like a math numbers formula, but I am curious how you get inspired in the writer's room in terms of some of the dark dialogue and then also this really witty banter, especially between Jen and Judy.
I think I always strive for what feels like an intuitive balance. You know, sometimes there are scenes like one that we're going to watch later that's just serious. It is high drama. And there are times when we're writing those scenes where I get a little bit like, oh my God, I hope this isn't like too dramatic. But then you have these two incredible actresses embody those characters and those words, and it doesn't need a moment of levity. It doesn't call for it. Sometimes life is just fucking serious. And most of the time, life is both of the things, you know, and the way that I always approach things, even when I'm at a funeral, you know, I literally just got off the phone with a friend whose mother just died suddenly, you know, and we cried together and then we were laughing, you know. It's just sort of our human nature to want to lighten a dark situation. And so, you know, as we're writing, if we're in sort of a darker scene, you know, I put myself in the shoes of these characters and I think, well, where does the lightness come in, you know, and there's usually one or two places and, you know, we just sort of feel it.
Mm-hmm. Now, for all of you, I mean, some of these lighter places are really just the moments that they have between each other. I mean, there's just the great, it's just my face, I have an angry face from very early in the season. There's a lot of like, Judy has that sorry, it's okay banter, like with Steve in season 1 and then with Jen in season 2. There's just so many things that feel very organic to who they are as people. I'm curious how much of this you guys, all of you, are pulling from your own lives. Like if it's written on the page, Liz, is that coming from your life? Or if it's not written on the page, Christina and Linda, are you able to sneak something in?
Not, you know, not the whole thing, but I like to, sometimes I refer to this show as a documentary.
Sure.
For me. I mean, you know, we're two separate people, Jen and myself, but I mean, a lot of my own stuff has ended up in the show. A lot of the feelings I have about life are very real and from that just is right there in me, but it's in all of us, you know. I mean, it starts with Liz and the team of writers who write this stuff down, and it's our job to go, okay, where am I in here too, you know, so that it's real, and people can escape and think they're really watching these two real human beings. So I mean, yeah, I do joke that it's a documentary, but there is a lot of my own, you know, personal stuff in there too.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that the two things that you referenced, that's my face, I have an upset face. That was a line, you know, that was written for the character, but you know, I don't know that I like necessarily feel that myself, but it felt very Jen to cover by being self-deprecating. And for Judy, I'm sorry, it's okay, that's actually something that we found while we were shooting. That was something that came from that moment. We were rehearsing the scene, and I kept like hearing it in my head. I always think of Judy as an over apologizer. And I thought, well, here's an interesting place to show it with this kind of abusive relationship. And so we just added it sort of last minute, like as an improv into a scene between Linda and James. And it was so immediately like, it fell right into place and felt so right that we then, you know, went back to it several times as just sort of their weird revolving door of unhealthiness.
I think I was going to say something about the bringing things to it. I think that the grief, I think everybody knows grief somehow, some way, especially right now. I feel like people are dealing with it in ways that they sort of maybe have never dealt with it before, in terms of like people grieving and you can't be there for them, or, you know, people passing away and you can't have a funeral. And I think that grief is this universal language that once you feel it, you can relate to others with it, even without words. And so I think that that's something that, you know, I've been through some grief in my life, and I even went through some grief while we were shooting. And I think that's something that you always draw on. And no matter what a character is doing, it's something that is felt, and you can't help but think of your own experience when things are happening. And I know that some of our dramatic improvs that we have comedic and we have dramatic improvs. And I think, you know, some of mine have come out of like that experience as well as some of the other funnier stuff too. And like Liz was saying, you know, it's like laughing in church or laughing at a funeral you do need the other side of it. So I think that the show, you know, that's what I was going to say about that. But then Liz, you were talking about that other thing, and then I was going to say something else about that, but now I don't know what that was. Oh, Zoom.
Well, the interesting thing about the grief aspect of the show is obviously, I mean, that was a big part of season 1, with, you know, Jen's husband being the one that was killed. And then in season 2, it's very much, you know, Judy grieving for Steve, even if maybe she shouldn't because he was terrible, but that's my own editorializing. And I'm curious, having the experience on season 1 as actors Christina and Linda, and knowing the show and knowing the tone and knowing what's going to be asked of you, how that affected season 2. You know, you have so much history with each other now, you have so much history with these characters and this world. How do you feel like you prepared differently or carried yourselves differently?
I'll just quickly, I think in season 1, I remember the first week, and Linda and I were trying to figure out what the tone was. And what was beautiful about it is it wasn't something that was in a book. There is no tone. This show has its own tone. So it was kind of beautiful for us to all sort of create the world that we were living in, and finding that balance between the humor not being jokes, but the humor because life is just bizarre and funny and painful. So I don't think we could have done the season 2 had we not lived through that season 1, because our characters have these big ideas coming at them now, right? I mean, my character has killed a human being, and she starts dating a twin. So, I mean, we were going to get there. We've got like these big fat ideas that these two people now have to like sort through. And I think it was, if like I said, if we hadn't lived through season 1, I don't know if we could have infused that believability into season 2. But because the writers are so good at what they do, it was easy to go into this world, this bizarre world of murder and twins and relationships. And
thank you, and I'm sorry.
I look
Don't be sorry. God, you give us so much good stuff to do. But, you know, it's like these roles, there's just, on any given day, we're doing everything that you can possibly think of, you know, there's no easy day on set in terms of, you know, it's acting. So it's, you know, but it's just there's so much. Liz gives us so much to do. And I feel like just when we think we know what we're doing, they turn something around on us, you know, so it's really fun. And it's like a torturous fun.
Did you feel
by the way, that's how it feels to write it too. It's fun.
Did you feel like you worked with each other differently, having the history with each other and the bond and the friendship from season 1 carried into season 2?
I think it's only grown. I mean, I think we were, I don't know how it happened and I don't know what it is exactly, but there was something that just happened where there was an ease from the first moment we met, Christina and I, and Liz and I actually too. And it just, there was a trust and an ease and an honesty about it. Being on set and doing Jen and Judy's, what we do is so much fun. It's unlike anything I've done on screen. And the relationship that we have, it's just, there's this flow that happens. And I feel like we could both feel it when it's going, and it's just really fun. And then we try to make each other laugh or cry.
Now, Christina, you already brought up the relationships for season 2, so I want to dive into that a little bit because there were really 2 big new relationships, Jen and Ben, which please tell me you did not mean for that to rhyme because every time I say it, I get a little tongue-tied. And then Michelle and Judy. And so, Liz, I wanted to talk to you about your inspirations behind both of these relationships because, you know, Judy and Michelle, it comes up so naturally and it's just, there's an attraction and they're there. But then with Jen and Ben, it's a little weird because, I mean, he has the same, as she mentioned, the same face as the person she killed. So I'm curious about, you know, your process of, you know, kind of breaking down how to introduce these new relationships and if you were looking specifically for a dichotomy between them.
You know, I wasn't necessarily looking for a dichotomy between the 2 relationships, but I wanted both of the relationships to feel earned and to feel fresh, like something you hadn't seen before. Which is something we're always striving for in the writer's room, which is, you know, I think audiences are so sophisticated and they've seen kind of every version of things at this point. You know, we've seen, for example, the coming out story, and it's a really important story to tell. And I'm a proud gay woman and I've been lucky enough to tell that story. I just didn't want to tell the coming out story with Judy because it's just not about that. You know, this is a show about grief, loss, forgiveness, friendship, you know. Coming out isn't really a part of, you know, there's no need for that. I wanted to tell a story about a romance that blossoms because it happens for the right time in both of the characters' lives. And for Judy, she just really likes this person and it fits well for what she really needs in the moment. The fact that, you know, Michelle, played by the amazing Natalie Morales, the fact that she's a woman is like, kind of not the point. It's just the fact that she's a great person for Judy in that moment. And so we were very purposeful and very deliberate about never calling it out. She never has to make a grand announcement. She never has to sit Jen down and say, I have to tell you something. I like women. Because, you know, in my experience, being gay or queer is just normal. It's my normal everyday life. I would never have to explain it to somebody. And I was just sort of longing to see a narrative on TV that reflected that normalcy. And in terms of Jen and Ben, which not do on purpose. You know, when you create a new character on a show, you have to clear the name. Yeah. You have to find a name that I guess either a million people have or nobody has. And because the character's last name is Wood, there was only very few names so that's why Ben's name is Ben. But for Jen and Ben, when season 1 wrapped, and I've told this story before, James Marsden sent me an email because he was only ever meant to be a 1-season character. And he basically asked, is there any way that Steve could survive a traumatic brain injury and drowning? Just wondering, because he had a really good time and we all loved working with him. And it was like such a great, we all had great chemistry together. And, it just sort of got me thinking, well, boy, if he's interested in coming back, like, how would we do that? I sat down with Kelly Hutchinson, who's one of my best friends and a writer on the show. And literally at the same exact time, after I told her the story about his email, we were like, twins? And, listen, perhaps a different writer would be like, no, that's stupid. But not this guy, not this guy. I just was like, oh my God, that makes me laugh so much. It is stupid, but it's stupid in the most beautiful way. And so as soon as I came up with the character of Ben, I was like, oh, he could sort of be the inverse of Steve. And maybe the inverse of Steve is somebody that would work really well with Jen. Maybe a soft, sweet man who understands what it's like, to have trauma, and he's got a dark side and he's got his own scars. And like, it just started to kind of form itself like right in front of my eyes. I just couldn't resist it. And also I knew that Christina and James had great chemistry from season 1. And I thought, well, what a fun challenge for them to have to recreate it in such a different way.
So looking at the chemistry that has to be created in these relationships, let's go back to Michelle and Judy for a second. Linda, tell me a little bit about working with Natalie to kind of find this relationship, because she's a new character for season 1. So there's not necessarily the history of anything. You can just create it new.
She is, yes, I'd never met her before. And she's great. She's just a naturally sort of magnetic person. She's incredibly charismatic. She's funny. She's honest. She's real. It was just so easy. It really is like, it just is so easy to fall in love with her on screen, and for Judy to have her be this breath of fresh air in her life, and for her to really appreciate Judy. I mean, I think it's, I say the sad thing is like the two people who come along and actually appreciate Judy for how odd she may or may not be, are Nick in the first season and Michelle in the second season. And those are the two people that she walks away from. And she sort of always exchanges it for something more toxic, because that's what she's used to, which I find fascinating about her. And I think people do that in life as well. So it's one of those mistakes you see a friend making over and over again, and you want to shake them and tell them, no, that's the right person for you. So I love that about the character. And I don't know, just she's funny. And anytime somebody is funny, they just, they disarm you, and you're open and you're vulnerable, which is what I think the wonderful thing about comedy. And she just really is truly funny. We improv things, and there is just such a great ease. I feel so fortunate that, I got to share all those things with her.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, Christina, I mean, you obviously had a relationship with James from season 1, and now he's playing such a different character. How did you guys work together to find the new dynamic?
Well, I want to preface this by saying when Liz told me the idea that there was a twin, I think I said, "Are you punking me?" And then I did, right? And then you said, "Will you please trust me?" And because I do trust her implicitly, like I just went, okay. I was like, how are we going to do this? How is the audience going to accept this? And because we had to accept it. And if we didn't accept it on a really real level, the audience isn't going to have a hard time with that too. But what was so easy for me is that James literally transformed from his soul, his voice, the way he stood, the way the hair, like everything was different. So Jen could kind of get intoxicated by that, but also having to play a character who is seeing the face of the person that she murdered. Every time she feels feelings for him, she's also being reminded of what she's done. So trying to find that was always a little tricky, but Liz is so great about keeping, me aware of that, in those moments. But it was easy because James made it easy. And
yeah, he's so good.
So I think the audience at first had the same reaction that Jen had, which is she passes out. And you know what I mean? You're like, what the? But then it's like, you you go into the story and you're like, oh, well, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he's a twin and he's lovely.
I also love that Judy does not think they look alike. Judy doesn't see Steve at all.
Right. And Judy doesn't have any interest in the nice twin, which is what you were saying about like her interest in toxicity, like was a little sad, I think. Like just here is this nice man who has the same face that she fell in love with Steve, but a much better heart and just nothing.
That reminds me of like what it was the scene at the door. And I think you say something about it. Well, they're not identical. And even Ben doesn't think they're identical. And then he starts talking about it. And Jen's like, it's the same fucking face. Like, it's, how are you guys not seeing that this is the same person? But
what were you say to me at the closet? It's the same fucking person, Judy.
Well, we wanted to do that. Like, we wanted Jen to be the audience. We wanted somebody to be in there going like, are you fucking crazy? Like, who would believe this? And so we thought, oh, well, then we'll just have Jen say all the things that we think the audience would think, which is they're the same fucking person. Because if we say it first, then, we'll beat everybody to it. That was the thinking there.
So I have to ask, I mean, we talked a little bit about like improvs and everything earlier and just how much you guys bring to the roles yourselves. Because we just went on a little bit of a cursing tirade, I would love to talk about the cursing in this show. No, it's fine. It's good. We're on the internet. We can say whatever we want. But I am curious because it is something that like you can't do in a fake way, if that makes any sense. Like you can write it in a script, but if the person can't deliver it, it's not going to sound real. So, and this sounds crazy, but it is a serious question. I'm curious how that comes together. How much of that is in your scripts and where it comes from, or how much of it is just, you know what, I feel it in the moment as an actor, I'm going to say it.
So, I'm from Brooklyn.
And that's where the anger in Jen comes from, because Jen is from Brooklyn.
Exactly. So she is based
I'm from Brooklyn too.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I definitely imbued the character with that sort of New York toughness. And I learned to curse at about the age of 10 and then never stopped. I have the mouth of a salty sailor. And I wanted to give that to this character. I wanted her to be offensive. I wanted her to be repellent to people if possible, because that's how it feels when you're in grief. When you're in grief, it feels like the stuff that you're putting off makes people feel really uncomfortable. And also she's extremely angry and she has every right to be. And so it's definitely scripted, but Christina adds her own. She adds her own fucks and shits. And every once in a while we'll put one in Judy's mouth, but only generally when she's kind of amped up. She's not a usual cursor. And that's how, I don't know. I mean, also Christina, I don't want to give anything away, but she knows her way around the word fuck. So
among many other, I started cussing in preschool. I learned the word sea sucker and in preschool, and my mom said that I couldn't stop saying it. She had a deal with me that I could cuss around her, but around nobody else. And I actually didn't until I was like an adult person and went, why am I not saying fuck all the time? It feels good. So, yeah.
And it does feel like the couple of times Judy says it might be a little bit of Jen's influence. I mean, these characters have rubbed off on each other in good ways and maybe not so good ways sometimes. I want to show a clip that I think speaks to the way they maybe rub off on each other at the end and also their friendship. We're going to look at a clip of Jen and Judy in the garage talking about the Greek mafia. I actually want to focus on the end of this clip because the go-between between Jen and Judy about the diet and the you look great, I wish you would love yourself more. I want to talk about how that came together. If this was actually in the script, if this was one of the ad-libs that you guys worked on at the end, and what you think it says about their relationship.
This was a conversation I think Linda and I were having like in the makeup trailer about how I had gained 10 pounds from season 1 to season 2. And I was Anyway, it just happened. We were doing the scene and I just said, I gained 10 pounds. And then you're like, I wish she would love you more. And that's something that like actually.
I do. I wish she would love herself more.
I wish I would.
You look beautiful.
But, wait till you see what's happening from here down now. Quarantine 97. Anyway, it's actually something that Linda has said to me in life. So that was actually kind of a personal, that was like Christina and Linda.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And does
Also
that
very
come up?
Judy and Jen.
Yeah. It fits. But did that come up like just in the moment as an ad lib, or is that a story that got relayed to Liz and she put in the script?
No. So the scene ends on the page. I forget. Maybe it was pie in the oven. Maybe it was like right around there. I think it ends. And what we like to do when these two ladies are in a scene together is let the camera keep rolling and just see what they do, because it's always something surprising and funny and sometimes even touching. And so that's what happened. We just let the camera keep rolling and they just kept going. And I think they just sort of perhaps regurgitated this conversation they had in the makeup trailer, but it was so like real because it was real. That's what they were literally feeling and talking about in the moment. And so it just felt like a no-brainer to keep it in.
So you're talking about these moments where you keep the camera rolling, and most of them, I imagine, don't make it into the show. Is there anything that did not make it into the show that you wish had? Or that you would throw out as like an extra on, I would say DVD, but no one has DVDs anymore. So social media.
I can't remember any ones that we didn't keep in because there are so many, because we generally do it on in every scene that they're in together. And sometimes we'll even like pinpoint a line in the middle of a scene that we go, okay, from here to this point, just say something like this. I generally give them like an area, like in season 1, when they're talking about Steve's penis in the car, and she's like, it's a nice penis. They improvise that entire thing. And it's hilarious and
Not based on a conversation in the makeup trailer. No.
Sure. And then in season 2, I do remember, and I always keep a lot of the improv because it's some of the funniest stuff in the show. It's so fresh and real and in the moment. I think one of my favorites from season 2, I think, is in episode 7, and Jen's like feeling really like weird about the whole Ben thing, and Judy's teasing her about it, and she says, oh, eat my fucking butthole, Judy. And that was all Christina. And then Linda improvised back at her, I would, but I'm seeing somebody. And it was, I mean, like, brilliant. So it's in there.
So what, I mean, Christina, Linda, like, what do you attribute that to? Like, is that just your own relationship with each other, or is that just like you have to be really on set to know anything you say might be used?
I hope that everything I say is used, because it makes it comes from some weird places in my own brain, but all attributed to, you know, having a great foundation that we get to work with.
Yeah.
You know? But moments like that, I literally said it to make Linda laugh, not ever thinking it would make it in the show. And I look back and Linda's like on the counter, like cracking up so hard. And I was like, yeah, of course they'll never use that because it's so bizarre. I don't even know where, I don't know why, it just happened. And it's just the way I would talk to my friends, you know. It's a real moment, you know. I would probably say that to one of my friends, like, eat my fucking butthole, so-and-so. I don't know why. Not that I don't even like that kind of thing, but it's that
line came out of the conversation in the makeup trailer.
The insight is being used for season 3. I can see Liz's brain working. So I do want to, I mean, we have another clip that I want to throw to, and it is kind of looking at the opposite side of that relationship, just when it gets really dark. It's, you know, right after Jen admits to Judy, hey, I killed Steve, but not for the reasons I told you I did. So let's actually show that, and then I'll have a couple questions. So, I mean, this moment is the most raw, the most vulnerable, I feel like, for both characters, and I'm sure for both of you as performers. I'm curious what you have to do to get there with each other in scenes like this, and what you think having each other to lean on through scenes like this does for the performance.
I think I'll just quickly say that we're both very lucky that I think that we have each other, because we're both very protective of one another in life. And so I feel incredibly safe to go to wherever one needs to go, whether intended or not. Sometimes it's intended to go that place and sometimes it's not. But I think that I feel so safe with Linda as a human being and as my partner in all of this, that we kind of just we get allowed to be there. And I'm not saying that those scenes are easy to do, but it's easy to get to where we need to go because we have wonderful words that help us, guide us there, and a wonderful leader who trusts us. And so yeah, I mean, it's hard to do because you feel it, you know. One of the most beautiful things Linda said to me in the first week we were working together, we're shooting the scene and I'm hitting that car with the golf club. And my character's supposed to be really enjoying it, you know, like there's an enjoyment to this violence. And I get back in the car and we drive away, and I just kept crying. You know, they said cut, but I couldn't, I was crying. And I kept saying sorry to her because I just, you know, started working with her. And Linda said to me, your body doesn't know you're faking. And it was like this really beautiful moment. And she had her hand on my hand and I was like, okay. And so I forgave myself for that moment. But anyway, that's an aside story. And it was a beautiful moment. And it's where I just went, okay, I'm so lucky right now that I have this person as a partner.
It's a really fortunate partnership. And I thank Liz and Jessica Albon for putting us together. It's been so, you know, professionally, creatively, it's been so fulfilling. And I love when we're on set together and we're doing what we're doing, because it's even when it's most serious, and even when it's draining and all of those things that, you know, it can be because of crying and thinking about things and all that stuff. It is satisfying on some level that I don't know that I've experienced. I think the characters are so rich. The story is fun, even if it's, you know, dark and tragic. And what we get to do in a single day is sometimes what you do in a whole week or a whole episode. And sometimes what we do in an episode is what people do in a whole series. So the idea that Christina and I get to do that and literally hold hands through it, and I get to do it with somebody who is, she's so talented. And I think that we just end up bringing the best out in each other. And I know she brings the best out in me. And I think that it's really fun. I mean, the freedom that we feel is Liz sort of giving us these characters and these, you know, fictitious lives that we get to live on screen, but we get to live them with each other. And we just get to enjoy it. She gives us ownership of it, you know, I mean, she's an incredible writer, and we always do everything that's on the page, because why wouldn't we? I mean, everybody that we have doing it, like, is writing these things and these twists and these turns that we don't even ever imagine coming. And then for someone like Liz to actually give us the freedom to say what we want to say in the in-between, it's a really rare mix of a showrunner and the way that she is sort of a visionary of the show.
So I want to look at, you know, we're all doing this obviously remotely because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I know season 3 hasn't gone up yet, but we all know, I hope we all know, there is a 3rd season coming. So I wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about like what you're most excited about stepping back into the world of this show. Liz, I want to start with you, since, I mean, you're already writing. I'm sure you have the idea.
Oh, I've stepped back. You know, we're like 5 months, 6 months into the writing process. Normally we'd be shooting by now, but we're holding off, you know, for a moment and hoping to shoot early next year. But it's been really bittersweet, honestly. It is, like we were saying earlier, it's sort of torturous fun, you know, to have to come up with all these twists and turns. It's really challenging to try to stay ahead of such a, you know, smart and shrewd audience. Like, people know sort of what our game is at this point. You know, they're like, okay, whatever I think it is, it's going to be something else. So, you know, we sort of have to stay on our toes and keep as creative as possible. But also, you know, I always want to challenge the writers and myself to keep it like emotionally fresh as well, you know, and so that we're not just playing the same dynamic over and over again. So, you know, we are definitely infusing this new season with some new layers, and it's been really, I mean, this has been the creative highlight of my entire life. I mean, it's so rare to ever get to make a show that you really like get to make exactly like you want to make it, and doing it at Netflix allows that. And then to get to make it with two of the greatest actresses of all time. Thank you. You're welcome. It's true. But I mean, like, literally my greatest hope for the show was that it was like maybe gonna get made, and maybe there will be some people in it that you've never heard of, you know. And you know, I mean, truly, like, I just didn't dream this big for it. And because of these two women, it has become what it is, because they really truly give themselves of these characters. They give every single little piece of themselves, and it's I'm so grateful to them. So I'm happy and thrilled to get to watch them do what we've been working on. You know, it's something I've been like sort of, I'm constantly imagining them. So I can't wait to actually see it in action.
And so, Christina, Linda, what do you want to see? What are you excited about for your characters stepping back into their shoes?
I'm just excited to be in the same room with people that I love and that I miss and that I respect and that make me feel good about myself and the world and make me feel safe. I'm really excited to have that opportunity, because this has been so isolating for all of us for so long, and hard for the world. I'm not saying for us, I'm saying for everyone. It's such a hard time, and to be able to like give my friend a hug, because I'll be allowed to, because we'll have been tested like 50 times that week, is what I'm really looking forward to. As far as the show, I know really nothing that's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to being surprised every table read of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the same. I think you really hit it with the idea of being together again. I think will be nice, you know, for sure. And just being able to do something that we love, and to wrap it up in a way that, you know, that Liz has decided is the way that she really, you know, she decided to, this is our last season, and we decided to end it this way, and to be able to do that and to complete the show and to have 3 seasons of, you know, exactly their story, exactly the way that she wants to tell it. I don't know what that is, but I'm excited. I'm excited to learn it. And I'm pretty sure I'll be surprised by half of it at least, if not all of it. But yeah, and you know, it's challenging times. So it will be nice to be around people when we can.
Well, thank you guys for being around us virtually. And
yes, thanks for having us.
We have the first 2 seasons that we can binge watch over and over while we're still in our safer at home, shelter in place, whatever we're calling it now. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.